Welcome to the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, courageously expanding love with me, Elizabeth Cunningham. My mission is to expand the conversation of love in the world. Is it possible to have deep, loving, healthy relationships? Have you ever been curious about having more than one relationship or partner at a time? Get ready to transform in love, be courageous, and set yourself free. In this show, we talk about relationships, sex, love, and the ways we wish we could be, but never thought were possible. The Elizabeth Cunningham Show starts now. All right, welcome to the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, courageously expanding in love. And today we are talking about sexological bodywork. But before we get into that and introduce our absolutely phenomenal guest, a reminder that the Elizabeth Cunningham Show is live every Tuesday at 3 p.m. on the Transformation Network Facebook page, and then is aired on YouTube and podcast every single Thursday. Honestly, if you just Google the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, all of your favorite platforms will come up and you can watch it in whatever form that you would like to. All of the links for the show are in the show notes. So if you want to listen to it on other platforms, you can, or if you want to get to know myself or my guests, all of our links are in the show notes. Okay, great. So on today's episode, we will be talking to Jeremy Shub about sexological bodywork. Jeremy currently works as a sex therapist, sex educator, sexological bodyworker, sex relationship coach. They live in Berlin. They identify as polyamorous, slutty, sex worker, kinky, genderfluid, and queer. Jeremy has university degrees in education, science, creative art, and sexual health. They have facilitated many workshops on sexuality, relationships, and pleasure. Jeremy, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you, Elizabeth. It's great to be here.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited. So obviously, as we have introduced you, we can tell that you are all about sex.
Yeah. Yes. I want to show my knuckles. I have love and lust on my knuckles just to tell people and remind me, this is the focus of my life.
I love it. I'm so curious. We are going to talk about sexological bodywork, but I do have that question for you just right off the bat is, this is the work of your life. So what does that mean for you to have sex be the work of your life?
Sex. It means when I get on a plane and I sit next to someone, they say, "What do you do?" I have to figure out, like, do I really want to tell them, or do I tell them I'm a therapist? There's a joke. But what it means is I get to hear really personal stories about people and sometimes about their suffering and their challenges with themselves or with a partner. Or it means I get to be doing coaching with people where, like, they've got something great going and it gets to be greater and greater and greater. And we do like just polishing of what they're doing. And it also means I get to run workshops currently all around Europe where people come together and connect. And as a group, we just marinate in this juiciness of great sex and sex positivity and sexuality.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I just hear how rewarding that is in the way that you speak about it.
Yeah. It's wonderful.
Beautiful. And I know that you have such a breadth of knowledge and information. And today we're just going to be focused on the sexological bodywork part of what you do. And so for those people who don't know, what is sexological bodywork?
Okay, so first I'm going to save you and I'm going to use the abbreviation that most people use, which is just sex bod. Otherwise, sex bod. We'll call it sex bod. That's going to make it easier for you. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Otherwise, sex bod. So sex bod is in some ways quite a particular thing, but in some ways many things. And each practitioner will interpret what it is in their own way and then apply that in a customized way to the person they're working with. So it doesn't have a cookie cutter like everyone's the same, you come in and magic formula happens. To me, like I come from an education background. I used to be a high school teacher. So for me, it's very much about education. Someone wants to learn something. And often that involves me with my clothes on, probably with gloves on, standing next to a massage table. There's a person on the massage table and they might have their clothes off or some clothes on. And the most frequent topics is people wanting to know about their arousal. So what turns me on? People wanting to learn about their body and their anatomy, which often involves their genitals and their anus, but it can involve like sensation all over the body. Mm-hmm. It can often involve orgasms, so people wanting to have more, have less, have faster, have different ones, different kinds of orgasm. Mm-hmm. For some people, it's about erections. Not enough, too much, again, wrong timing, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But it can be very much about genitals and pleasure of the genitals. And often about, like I said, anatomy. So like I have a very detailed understanding of human genitals, and it's really useful for people to learn. So it's often in a session, someone will say, wow, I'd never seen that. I've never felt that. I didn't know that was there. So that's like education kind of parts, but it can also be relational. So sometimes I work with couples, and so it's two people learning about their arousal style, the other person's arousal style, talking about sexual things they want to experience. So sometimes it kind of dips a little bit into the sex therapy or the sex education. How was that for an answer?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I definitely hear where you pull all of your background resources, knowledge into everything that you do. And that in sex bod, thank you for that, by the way. In sex bod, that there's a multitude of reasons why people come in, and that it can involve, and I kind of want to parcel this out a little bit, is that it can absolutely involve your genitals, genital pleasure, things around that, but it is body work, so like the full body.
Yeah.
And so and I'm also hearing inside of that as well, not just working with individuals, but working with couples too.
Yeah.
And so when you are like when you're helping people discover pleasure in their body, how often does it just involve genitals, or how often is it just your entire body?
I'm really passionate that as sexual beings, we access the whole body. So I don't insist on it, but really, it's not that I'll never really do a session where someone just walks in the door, jumps on the table and says, touch my genitals. Like that'll probably never happen. And I should say also before any touch, there's a lot of conversation, what I call a creative collaboration, in which I sit with the person, we talk about what vision they have, what thing they're talking about. Sometimes we talk about trauma. And then there's a lot of talk about negotiating what will be touched, what won't be touched, and then consent and the boundaries of what's going on. So there's a lot happens before anything happens. But what I'm learning is that when someone feels safe and relaxed, they can access more sensation and more pleasure. And that's actually just a physiological thing where when we relax our body, there's more blood flow, and more blood flow to the skin or to the nerves means more sensation. So I'll pretty much always start with some touch or some gentle relaxing massage over a person so that they can, just kind of get a bit floppy and kind of surrender into the moment. And then if there's gentle touch involved, there's a lot more sensitivity for the person.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And I love that progression and the explanation of that. Yeah, people aren't just going to jump on your table and you're just going to touch their genitals.
No.
No, no. For those people listening to the podcast, there was a very lots of no shaking with the head.
Yeah.
No, 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 no.
Yeah.
And that it must be so. I understand that it would be so educational, not just in explaining consent conversations, but
Yeah.
that you would have those consent conversations. It's like the actual doing of the experiencing of the consent conversation and creating that safe space.
Yeah. And I run a lot of workshops that are just about consent, just about asking for what you want. And so in the individual or couples work, it's really clear, like, what are we agreeing to here? Because that's really what is consent, is like, I want this and you want this. Can we agree to have this shared experience? Okay, we consent to that. So yeah, I'm really passionate about that.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I think that in having a in doing the work that you do, that it must be, first of all, yeah, really rewarding, but also really seeing where people get stuck, get stopped, because I see that oftentimes in the conversations of love and sex and relationships, and particularly in sex, that we have this idea of, well, we should already know, or
Yeah.
if we don't know, it's like it's embarrassing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so really being able to, and that's, we're going to take a break here pretty quick, but that's one of the questions that I have when we come back is, okay, but like, if people are like, oh, well, I should already know, or I already do this, this area is fine, there's a lot of like brushing over. And so what do you see? And again, we'll answer this question when we get back, but what do you see as far as how people get stopped and stuck, and what prevents people from really allowing themselves to explore
Yeah.
this area, this part of this and their bodies? Like,
Yeah.
what stops people from exploring their bodies and pleasure?
Great question. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to take a really quick break, and then we're going to answer that question. Well, Jeremy's going to answer that question when
Yes.
we get
And
back.
you? Yes.
Hey, welcome back to the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, courageously expanding in love. And we are here today with Jeremy Shub, and we are talking about sexological bodywork, or sex bod, as
Okay.
Jeremy has told me, is the shortened version of that. And where we left off was asking the question of what prevents people from, where's the sticking point, where's the pain point, why don't why don't more people do this? Why don't more people, have access to, or think that they can have access to sexological bodywork?
Yeah. It's a really good question. The simple question is, we live in a sex negative society, or planet, I would say. And there's so many taboos that come from religions, that come from media, that come from our parents, that come from our peers, that say, don't do that, don't think that, don't touch that, don't touch your own thing, don't touch someone else's thing. And very little training in how to ask, what to ask for. So we're not in an environment that is conducive to pleasure, really. And I think that's changing a little bit, and SexBod is definitely helping with that. And also, I mean, sexological bodywork is quite a new thing. It sort of came about the time of the AIDS crisis in America, where some people said, hey, we need to do some things a bit different. And some amazing pioneers came and said, hey, let's set up this other thing where people can learn. So I can talk to you about sex education, and you could listen and you might get an idea. But these pioneers were saying, hey, I can show you with my hands how that feels on your body. And that is an amazing way to learn. And, there are some adults who think, I don't need to learn. I know how to have sex. But it'd be like me handing you a violin and saying, okay, now play this. You don't know. And I mean, you could make a kind of squeaky sound with it, but really, if we want to play our body well, and I love this metaphor, it helps to have a teacher, and it helps to have someone to practice with, or a teacher or a coach to help you practice. So, sorry, to answer the question, also there is shame. Shame is such a massive thing that prevents people from accessing pleasure with themselves or with other people. And that's an endless pile of poop, is that we are ashamed to want what we want.
Gosh, yeah, that is absolutely true. I mean, it's a sad fact, but I think that I think that it's so relatable for everyone too. I mean, everyone has something that they're ashamed of.
Yes.
Whether it be like with their body image, whether it be with what they're, quote unquote, supposed to be doing or supposed to be knowing about their body, especially in the area of sex, whether it be with, trauma that they've had in the past, being ashamed of what's happened to them. I absolutely see that for sure. And what are some of the common themes that you run into in your practice where people are blocked or stuck, or this is the pain point that they have and when they come to you?
That's hard to sum up. It's so different. I work with so many different kinds of people who are wanting very, very different things. For some people, be lying on a massage table with their clothes on and just receiving touch that might have a tiny bit of arousing in it is a massive challenge. And then other people are like, I'm all across this, but so recently I had a few people who really want to have pleasure in their anus. And I was like, I've explored so much my sexuality, and this is people, men, women, non-binary folks who are like, here's this place which I don't know about, Jeremy. Can you help me by touching me here so I can learn about this pleasure? And there can be amazing relaxation and pleasure of the anus, but there can also be a lot of emotion and a lot of shame and a lot of fear. But it's hard to find a person who's not a sex bod practitioner who's going to help with this. You could go see a sex worker and hope that they know what they're doing, or you could have a partner who doesn't know, and you could also try and kind of like figure it out or watch YouTube. But my role is amazing. Like, it's such an incredible gift to witness people and to support them, particularly with anus work, because where else are you going to have this experience?
Yes, I think that really when you put it that way, it seems so obvious.
Yeah.
Like it seems so obvious, like, oh yeah, like where else are you going to have a place that's safe, that's consensual, and that's educational,
Yeah.
where you're actually using your body and like feeling things. And it makes such a big difference to experience something in your body versus reading about it or hearing about it or like listening to a podcast about it,
Yeah.
where actually having someone, because you don't know always what is going to come up for you, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure that these people that come to you and they're like, oh, I want to experience more pleasure in my anus, and I have all of these things around it. I'm sure that they don't even know what's going to come up even. And so to have a safe space to be able to explore that, and to have someone like you who's going to, whatever comes up for them, hold that space for them, let them know that it's okay. Because I think that's the other thing. And when you're playing with partners, is that there's like a lot of exploration, and that's really great, but partners don't always know, and I definitely know this from personal experience, partners don't always know how to hold space when something does come up for you that's unexpected.
Yeah. And I would say it's probably expected in my work
Mm.
that someone is going to have some emotional release, touch onto some pain or some trauma. It's so frequent. I expect it. And like you say, I just hold space for them and say, all of you is welcome. Your tears are welcome. Your pain is welcome. Your laughter is welcome. All of you is welcome here. And it's such a relief for people to say, you're holding me. Thank you. And the sessions are super slow. Like, that's important too. Like, when I do in-person sessions, they might be 2 hours long. They might be 3 hours long. Like, we're crawling along with people so that they can feel safe.
Yeah, and it really is like, where else, that's what just keeps coming up in my brain, is like, where else can you get that? Where else can you have a space where all of you is welcome in that way?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because even in therapy, and you're a sex therapist as well, like, even in therapy, it's got to be a little bit different, because it's not like that experiential part.
Yeah. Yeah. It still comes in sex therapy, definitely. And I also do couples counseling. And so, a lot of my work is holding space for people to experience themselves and to feel emotion, and then to feel pleasure often also.
Mm. And I'm curious as well, because I know that you also do a lot of work with the trans community and the queer community. And so is there, I mean, there has to be things that come up inside of those communities that are unique, or like challenges that are unique that you address in those communities. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, because I do identify as queer and gender fluid, I do end up working with a lot of people who identify somewhere on gender diverse and somewhere in the queer kind of rainbow family. Complex. So trans people, if I could make a stereotype, can have a lot of issues about their body. Body dysmorphia and gender dysmorphia, these two situations in which people are saying, I just don't like this. And it's not like I don't like because I've got a little bit of fat or something. This is not my body. And so to love it and to receive pleasure from it can be a challenge. So guiding people with that, trans and gender diverse people. For queer folk, yeah, sometimes I'm coaching people, and this is more with the couples, with same-sex attracted couples, supporting them to have the intimacy that they desire with each other. And you might have seen Gwyneth Paltrow, what was it called? Sex, Love and Goop.
Yeah,
Recently,
sex, love, and good.
last
Yeah,
year,
that show.
a lot about sex bod. And there was a lesbian couple there who were like, hey, we don't know how to have sex with each other. So sometimes I'm working with queer couples, and we have to really look at arousal styles, foreplay, non-penetration kinds of sex, oral sex, hand sex, and looking at anatomy a lot, and just going, okay, what happens when your two bodies look kind of like each other? What are we going to do here? But there's also a lot of shame still. Like, queer people live lives in which they're told that what they're doing, how they're making love to someone else isn't okay, which is a thing that heterosexual people, mainly it's like, okay, yes, sex is okay. But for queer people, it's like, what you're doing with your genitals and your mouth and your pleasure and your hands with that person is not okay. So sometimes we really have to work through the what's called internalized homophobia, in which people are saying, hey, I'm not okay. And we have to process a bit, getting to like, yeah, you're valid. You have full permission to have all this pleasure in your body and that body and as many bodies you like, in whatever way you like. So yeah, it's a factor.
Yeah, thank you for breaking that down. And I think that it's so beautiful. And that's why, I love having these conversations, is because it really is, since we don't talk about it,
Yeah.
it gets buried, and it's not out in the open. And so then we suffer alone.
Yeah.
And, also speaking as a queer person, we get into this space where it's like we're suffering alone, and we don't know how to not suffer alone, because because you're not okay.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like, wherever you turn, where it's just like, well, how you're feeling isn't okay. And so it's like, well, who do I turn to then?
Yeah.
And so also thank you for the work that you're doing, because it just makes, like, exactly what you just said, like, your pleasure is okay, what you want is okay, like how you want to experience pleasure is okay. And also what I heard in what you said is like broadening the definition of what sex is.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I could talk about that for days and days and days.
Yeah, I know. I was about to add like I want to ask you like what is sex to you, but I'm like,
Yeah,
oh my God, what a huge can of worms. But just
yeah.
it like, can you summarize like what is sex to you as a sex bod worker?
A lot more than penetration and a lot more than genitals. Maybe you could say it's arousal and a lot more than orgasm. Like, it was really important a decade or 2 decades ago that women have orgasms, and that was a really great part of feminism and sexual revolution. Now, more progressive sex educators are kind of like, well, let's not just focus on orgasm. Like, it's okay, but if it's the destination, we forget the journey.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pleasure to be had with kissing, with rubbing, with flirting, with play, with role play, with kink, with like, there's so many ways that we can be turned on. So, yeah, I don't have a neat definition. I just would say it's a lot more than the kind of tiny little box that we've been fed.
Oh, beautiful. I love it. I love it. Okay. So we are going to go on another break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about what's possible. Like, I just want to like bust open the doors and just be like, this is what's possible, and talk about all of the juiciness. So
Yeah.
that is what we're going to talk about when we come back from break. So we'll see y'all in a second. Welcome back to the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, courageously expanding love. And we are talking to the fantastic Jeremy Shub about sexological bodywork, or sex bod, as they so graciously have made me privy to. There we go. Words, English.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
and what we've been talking about is sexological bodywork, sex bod, and where people get stopped, what comes up for people, and sometimes the shame that comes up for people, the cultural, societal planet norms that we have that are sex negative, that stop people, and just the trauma that we hold in our bodies sometimes. So we've been talking about all the things that stop people, but now we're going to open it up, open the doors, and they're going to share with us. I'm going to ask you about what's possible. Like, what do you see? I'm sure that your clients just get amazing results. So I'm just like, what's possible when you start doing this work, when you allow yourself to explore the pleasure that you're able to feel in your body?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would say everything's possible, but that's not a great answer.
Yeah.
So some people, use a certain freedom, liberation. We were just talking about orgasms. So there are people who've never had orgasms who want to have orgasms, and it's possible to have, many kinds of orgasms and multiple orgasms if that's a thing that you're interested in. Um, one of my interests also is tantric yoga or sacred sexuality, and so it's also possible that we can have just this kind of very sex positive, hedonistic like pleasure. But it's also possible that it's a spiritual connection is possible. And I work with people in that way to help them get, well, how do I use our sexual energy as a vehicle? Some people use it for sex magic and for manifesting, for spell work. The tantric path is more about how do I dissolve my ego, which is a pretty large undertaking, and how do you dissolve yours, and how do we kind of merge into this blissful cosmic pleasure, sensation, sex. So they're kind of like peripheral things, but they're definitely things I work with. But I think your question might have been like, what can we feel in the body? You know, what sensations? And one of my current passions is really about the pelvis, about the pelvic floor. I'm so excited about this area because it doesn't get touched much. And I can touch people's pelvic floor from outside their body, but also from inside through a vagina or through an anus, and do release work. And so I'm not sure if you've heard about armoring and de-armoring of bodies.
I have, but I would love for you to share and expand
Okay.
on what that is. Yeah.
I'm very excited about this, but I'll give you a short version. There was a German psychiatrist called Wilhelm Reich, and he had this idea that we if something happens to us like a shock, we find a tension in our body, and that can be in all sorts of places, but very much in the genitals. And so if something happens where someone's touched you in a way you don't like, maybe when you're younger, abuse, assault or trauma, or even said something that makes that part of the body contract, then we can have like concrete, like tension and blocks inside the pelvis. And when they can be touched and released, then there can be more of this blood flow and more of the sensation of the nerves. And people who were basically numb end up having these like holographic, like astral, full body orgasmic experiences because their function comes back. Mm. And that can happen anywhere on the body, but it can definitely happen where something might have happened in that genitals or anus or any part of our pelvis, and it contracts so much. Mm. And I've been working recently with people with vaginismus, which is a condition in which sexual intercourse is really painful, and having amazing results in which these people can open and soften and receive and have sensations of pleasure and orgasmic experiences. So I think there's a part of the answer, like there's many answers to your question.
Right. Yeah, it's a big question. I mean, we could take it, like you said, everything's possible. And so you can take it a lot of different places. But I love the place that you took it. And one of the reasons is because it's so interesting to me. I think that, at least in my mind, conventional wisdom is that if you have trauma, that you work it out through talking, like therapy. Right.
Yeah.
And so the idea that you can release trauma or de-armor your body to be able to experience more pleasure through touch is a little almost counterintuitive for me, to be honest. Right. Because I'm just like, oh, well, if I'm armored in that part of my body, then I don't want it to be touched. So it seems counterintuitive to like have touch be healing. But at the same time, as you're explaining it, I'm like, oh, and it also makes a lot of sense. That you could release that during, like, while touching. However, my question is, is this just a release in their body, or do you see that people are actually healing trauma?
Great question. Mm. And I just want to go back to your kind of counterintuitive idea, which is that the container holds it. Like we were talking about holding space before. So the consent, the negotiation, the boundary part, the slow, the gentle, the whole thing means that someone can drop their guard a little bit. Mm. And hopefully they've done a little bit of talk therapy earlier, and I will do that with them or someone else. So you do a little bit of the talking part, and then you bring your body. And our body's like, if you cut your finger, it heals because our body wants to heal. Like we're actually designed to restore ourselves. But if we're holding too much tension in something, it's hard for it to self-release itself. And so sports massage is the same thing. You know, you get a cramp in a muscle and a remedial therapist comes and massages it and helps it let go. So we know it in other parts of the world. Now I've forgotten your question. Healing trauma. Yes, right. So I ended up doing this work because I saw a sex bod person because I had a trauma in my body and in my, I was going to say heart, but in my system, in my psyche. And the work they did on my body healed both my body and allowed the trauma to be accessed and so to be witnessed. And because of that work, I was like, wow, I want to be a practitioner in this work because it's amazing. Because there are people who spent decades doing talk therapy and they get about like this far, you know, a small amount, and they come see me and something amazing is released. And they're like, wow, I needed to bring my body here because we're not cut off. I mean, our society thinks we're cut off at the neck and there's this head that sits on top of some leg moving thing. But we're actually we're one system. We are our body. We're in our body. And so embodiment is a big part of sexological bodywork. And some of the tools that we use is breath. So we bring people into their consciousness and their awareness and their sensation through breathing. Sound. So it's really important that we get to express sounds of pleasure or sounds of pain. Movement and touch, and they're big parts of sex bod.
Yeah, the more that I learn and the more that I have these conversations, I love this show. I love my show.
I love your show.
I love my show because I get to have these conversations. I'm like, I learned so much.
Yeah.
I learned so much. But the more that I'm having these conversations is the more that I'm seeing how much healing through our body is so necessary. Like, not just good, like, it's not just like, oh, healing through your body is a really good idea. It's becoming more and more clear to me. It's like, no, healing through your body is actually necessary. It's like a necessary part of healing.
Yeah.
And regardless of, if you've had, a super traumatic past or not, that it seems to be just necessary to access healing and just heightened states of not just heightened states of arousal in your body, but just being able to have the capacity to do that. That's how it seems to me.
Yeah. And that can happen. I've witnessed that over and over again in the work I do. My lived experience of it is that it's possible. Yeah, amazing work.
Wow. I'm blown away. Like, part of me is sitting here being like, I should look into getting certified as a sexological bodyworker. That's like I'm like, maybe that's my next continuing education and like what I'm up to.
Yeah.
That's like literally what I'm sitting here thinking.
Yeah. Or go see one, because the work is not forever. Like, the people who do psychoanalysis where every day they go see a psychiatrist and they do it for years. Like, I say to people, I want to be obsolete in your life. Like, I do short-term work. I will do like 5 to 6 sessions with people, and you're going to get a lot of benefit from that work. And then you might see me in like 3 months or 6 months, but it's quite amazing, like the efficiency of the work.
Wow. Beautiful. Brilliant. Okay, great. This is, oh my gosh, like you said, we could talk about this forever and ever and hours and hours and days and weeks and weeks. But we are going to take another break. And then when we get back from break, we're going to wrap up. We're going to do our end of show questions. And then we're going to talk about how people can find you and what resources that you have and that you offer. So when we get back from break, we'll talk about all that. Welcome back to the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, courageously expanding love. And Oh, unfortunately, we are on our last segment with Jeremy Shub talking about sexological bodywork, sex positivity, pleasure, expanding your pleasure, healing through your body. Oh my gosh, like this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for bringing all of your, not even, I thank you so much for giving us like a teaser of how much knowledge you have around
Yeah,
this.
you're welcome.
I was about to say all of your knowledge around this. I'm like, no, I feel like we've just
Yeah,
like just even the tiny tip of the iceberg on all of
yeah,
this stuff. So yeah, just so appreciate you being on the show.
you're welcome. And thank you. It's a great
Yeah.
honor. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna do the wrap up questions of the show that I ask everyone, and then I want you to share how people can reach out to you, what resources that you have, because like I said, anybody who's listening, watching the show, I mean, if you haven't been able to tell, Jeremy is an endless well of information about all of this stuff and resources. So please reach out to them. Okay. So first question.
Yeah.
What does love mean to you?
Oof. Oh, that is such a good question. It just means everything to me. I did get tattooed on my knuckle. Um, yeah, that is the everything. You know, that is part of my mission on being on this planet is to love and be loved and support others in loving. So it means my how I am with my partner. It means how I am with the person at the shop where I buy milk. It means how I relate to my children and my parents. It's how I do my work. You know, I'm loving in my work, and I think that is surprising for some people, but that's the way I work. Is I have unconditional love for the people I work with, and I think people know that. I mean, I don't need to say, "Hey, I love you," but you know that's where I am. My heart is open to people, and yeah, it's what I aspire to every day. Um, it's complex. It's it's a small word that means many things, and yeah, it's everything.
Hmm, thank you. If people get nothing else, what is the one thing that you hope that they got out of this episode?
You're allowed pleasure.
Mm.
Yeah, everyone has their own and mine and yours permission to play and be turned on and to experience the oxytocin and the serotonin and the endorphins and the connection and the love. But yeah, pleasure is powerful and necessary right now and accessible for all of us.
Thank you. All right. What is one action that people could take?
Whew, that's such good questions. I'm a big fan of self pleasure, that's sometimes called masturbation, but in sex we call it self pleasure.
Mm.
And taking some time, creating a ritual. The self love of self pleasure is, my hands on my body, my whole body, maybe my genitals, and really becoming aware of me and what I enjoy. And then after I have that experience, I think I can have experiences with other people. So, I run workshops on self pleasure, I do coaching on people about self pleasure. There's things to learn, there's things to overcome. I think that is one thing we can all do wherever we are, whoever we are.
Beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
All right. What are you promoting?
I am promoting my work.
Mhm.
At the moment, I'm doing a lot of work online. So it's fun that you're in another country from where I am. I'm working with people all around the world. And before the pandemic, I was not anti technology, but I just loved the connection of being in the room with someone. And then COVID happened and everything went online. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go online. And now after I do a kind of hybrid, like I still in this city work with people's bodies with touch. I'm working with so many people in so many places, doing so many things online, and But people who can't access, who are isolated, or people who want a specialized kind of service, it works. It blows my mind. I had a session with someone in Australia today, and they were like, "Yeah, this works. You know, you supported me in the way I needed support on a screen. It's great."
That, you know what, that's also what I have found. Because I, same, before COVID, I was like, oh no, I'm not going to do my work online, all this stuff. And then COVID, it was like, oh, well, now you have to. And then it was like, oh wow, like it actually works so much better. And almost like sometimes it's like, I don't know if we could have done it, especially in like different parts of the world, like we couldn't have done this. We couldn't have had this connection. We couldn't have had this breakthrough, this transformation without online. Yeah. Anyway. All right. How can people find you?
If you Google my name, you can find me. And that is, my website is my name, jeremyshub.com. My Facebook is my name, Jeremy Shub. My Instagram is my name. And that's the best way. Website's pretty good because you get to read a little bit about the work, and if you want to book sessions, you do that through the website. So all on the book a session page.
Great. Perfect. And all of that is also in the show notes as well. So anybody who is watching, listening, you can just scroll down. You can click right on that. You don't even have to remember. You can just scroll down. On it.
Yeah. There's one tiny thing about the website. So it has book a free 30-minute Zoom. So anywhere, anyone can just book that. My booking calendar just adjusts time zones, and I'm having these kind of check-ins with people all around the world. They get to see my face, hear my voice. They get to ask me things, tell me things, whatever. So it's a free session, no obligation, just a great way to start a connection.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for the passion that you have. Thank you for the love that is behind all of your work. It is clear. It is clear that like love just exudes from you. So thank you. I appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. All right. And thank you every single person for watching, listening. Remember to like, subscribe, turn on the notifications so you don't miss anything. We are live every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time on the Transformation Network Facebook page. And we are then aired on YouTube and podcast platforms every single Thursday. All the links are in the show notes. Again, you don't have to remember anything. You just scroll down and click on things. Beautiful. All right. Until next time, everyone, keep loving. You have been listening to The Elizabeth Cunningham Show, Courageously Expanding Love with me, Elizabeth Cunningham. Tune in live every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on transformationtalkradio.com, where we shed light on relationships, sex, love, and the ways we wish we could be, but never thought were possible. Learn to love yourself and create the relationships you want. Connect with me at elizabethannCunningham.com. That's elizabethannCunningham.com.